I had a mentor, a sage of a man, about 10 years ago. He said, Ted, I want to give you 3 things your marriage needs to thrive. You have to do these 3 things. If you don't do these 3 things, I don't know if your marriage will make it. We were having breakfast together and I'm going, he salted this thing so well. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be good. Like, he's gonna give me the secret. And I didn't get it in premarital counseling. I'm hanging on this every word. And he goes, here's what it is. And here's what he told me that morning at breakfast. Every marriage needs a daily delay, weekly withdrawal, and annual abandon. I gotta be honest with you. When he first shared that, I'm like, that's not that great. I was expecting more. I'm gonna make you pay for breakfast now. I don't really feel this is worth it. And he said, no, Ted, you don't understand. You need a daily delay, which is 15 to 20 minutes where you and your wife need to get together. You and Amy need to get together. You need to be distraction-free. You need to be tech-free. You need to have newspaper, magazine, remote control down. You need to be connected, squared off with one another, eyeball to eyeball. And he said that 15 to 20 minutes a day, 20 years from now, Ted, you'll look back and you'll say, boy, where we were to where we are now, we have a thriving marriage because we prioritize just 15 to 20 minutes a day. He said, and what's great is then you go on the date night. It's where you are tonight. That's the weekly withdrawal. This is when you get away, you move away from your house, you leave your kids screaming at home with someone who will keep them safe, but then you go and enjoy one another. And he says, if you have the daily delays, the weekly withdrawal will be fun. See, a lot of couples ruin date night because it's the time to catch up on the budget. You wanna suck the life out of a date? Talk about your budget. Gary Smalley once told me, he's a mentor of mine for the past 13 years. He said, Ted, you know what I want you to do tonight? When you go on the date with Amy, I want you to ask her just what is it that would hurt her the most if you ever were to have eyes for another woman. And it was one of those things where I listened and did everything Gary told me to do. Well, that was the worst date of our married life. It brought up conversations and he goes, you did that? He goes, I was just kind of kidding. I didn't mean for you to actually go and do that. But here's what we've discovered now for 10 years of prioritizing these 3 in our life. When we spend the 15 to 20 minutes together, quality time every day, the weekly withdrawal, the date night is a blast because we're caught up, we're covered. And then what's really become a blast in our marriage is at least once a year, we plan an annual abandon. It's something we look forward to all year. So tonight we're prioritizing dating in your marriage. And here's what dating does. Dating esteems marriage as highly valuable. It says our marriage is important. This is what it says to family and friends. When you go on a date, when you prioritize couple time together, family and friends hear this: our marriage is important. What's going on? What needs to be talked about that we've been sweeping under the rug for a while? And now here's the important part. All 3 of these that I'm gonna share with you tonight are found in the Song of Songs. And the first one, the daily delay, is found in the Song of Songs, chapter 1. And what they're gonna talk about, Solomon and the Shulamite woman, is creating a safe home. We're gonna talk about creating an environment that's safe, and an environment, the word they actually use is lush. It's a place that you can come home from the grind of the day. It's a place where you can retreat to from a busy work week, and you can unwind. It's in your home, creating this place of rest, rejuvenation, and relaxation. And here's what it says in the Song of Songs, chapter 1, verse 14. My beloved is to me a cluster of henna blossoms from the vineyards of En-Gedi. This is what we're going for with the daily delay, an En-Gedi home. An En-Gedi is a desert oasis. It's a place in the midst of a dry, barren land where you know I can go to and find refreshment. That's the first aspect of a daily delay. The second aspect we see in verse 17. The beams of our house are cedars, our rafters are firs. Now we're talking about safety. Now we're talking about, I want you to be who you are. I don't want to change you. I don't want you to become someone you're not. This is like, and I want you to share with me your secrets, your goals, and your dreams. And when you share those with me, guess what? I'm not gonna respond with, this is what we teach pastors, right? When someone drops a bomb in counseling, this is a bad response. You said what? You did what? That's a bad response. A good response is listening, understanding, and validating. I want to know who you are, curiosity and fascination. The problem is if you don't have a daily delay, you're going to let things build up. If you don't talk through issues, you're going to let it go on and on for a little while, and pretty soon you're going to have this explosion. In our home, for the first 7-8 years of our marriage, we called it the QMR, and it stood for a quarterly marriage realignment. They weren't scheduled. We didn't put them on a calendar. They just kind of popped up. But what would happen is we wouldn't talk about things for a long time. We'd let it go. I'm a stuffer. I'm a classic stuffer. If something's bugging me, let's not talk about it, pretend it's not happening. In a couple weeks, it'll be gone. Never worked. Never worked. My wife, she's more of an escalator. She likes to get things taken care of before the sun goes down. And if the sun's gone down, we're gonna go 24 hours, another round, till the sun goes down again. And a classic stuffer, what's our favorite line? If you withdraw from conflict, we like to say what? I don't want to talk about it right now. Let's talk about it in April. I think I'll be doing better. I'll level off emotionally by April. And the quarterly marriage realignment, some of you are like, are you kidding? We have a weekly marriage realignment. Some of you have an annual marriage realignment. Some of you have never talked about any of the issues. We find in church the number one issue couples will not talk about, it's sex. What's happening in the bedroom? Let's not discuss that. Let's just let that one go. But I'm telling you, 15 to 20 minutes a day to say, we're gonna get together and we're gonna talk about what's happening. So here's how it works in marriage. Here's what you're expecting. Okay, this is what I want out of my family time. This is what I want out of my job and career. This is how much money I want to make. This is the type of house I want to live in, the type of car I want to drive. And then this is what I really have. This is how much I make, which is quite a bit lower than what I think I'm worth. Okay, and this is the car I drive. This is the home we live in. This is the school that our kids attend. And then let's talk about marriage. This is how often we have sex, right? It's this often a month when I'd like to get more of on a weekly routine. And so we start a marriage becomes about these expectations here and then reality. And the gap between the two, you know what it's called? It's called stress. And stress is our socially acceptable term for anger. We're mad. This is what I want. I ain't got it. I'm getting this. And here's the bottom line about that gap. The gap, okay, the quality of my marriage rests in that gap between expectations and reality. Some of you are here tonight, this is as good as my marriage will ever get. Never get any better than this. But when we got married, I wanted this. And what I love, the reason I love doing counseling is because I love picturing a special future for these couples who feel like this is as good as it'll ever get. It's downhill from here. There's no way we can go anywhere better than this. And so when I sit down with a couple for counseling, I always, before we go anywhere, I ask the wife, what's your expectation of our time together? And she'll share it. And I ask him, what's your expectation of our time together? She'll share it. And I go, oh, but now I get to share what my expectation is for this time. And my expectation for this time isn't to sit here and listen to your story and go home and tell my wife, wow, at least we're not as jacked up as the couple I met with today. They're a mess. Our marriage ain't nothing like what it could be a whole lot worse. You know what I tell them my expectation is? I said, my expectation is that out of our time, maybe today, but maybe after a couple times, maybe after a couple weeks or a couple months, however God is working in your life, My goal, my dream, my prayer is that you'll experience a marriage that you never dreamed was possible. I don't want you going back to what you had, because what you had got you to where you are. I want you to experience something where you're like, I didn't realize it could be this great. And I know you're going, how do we start that? It starts with the 15 to 20 minutes. That's the start to your home becoming an Engedi. That's the start to your home becoming a safe place where you can rest together, relax together, and you don't have to fear. You want a marriage where I can let out what I'm thinking and feeling right now, and she's gonna receive it. Not with judgment, but with curiosity and fascination. Wouldn't you agree that's a good marriage? That's a healthy marriage. So how do you do that? How do you give and serve and share and live in this gap between expectations and reality? Well, I'm convinced the best marriages are the ones where a spouse serves, gives, and loves without expectation of anything coming back to you. That's when marriage gets fun. The worst marriage on planet Earth are when two people are plugged into each other as the source of life. And they're limited supplies, they're toxic and they're stagnant and they're feeding into each other. Not good. The best marriage in the world is where they disconnect from one another as the source of life, plug into the true and only source of life, and then they spend their days giving one another the overflow. That's a great marriage. That's a fun marriage. Now, I don't know, for some reason, I have a face that screams retail. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Every time I go into a store or a restaurant, I'm asked the question, do you work here? Anybody else deal with that question all the time? I get asked that question so often, I'm tired of fighting it, I just go with it. I'll be in the back room picking out shoe sizes for people and helping them with shirt colors. I'm just done fighting the whole thing. And so we were at one of our favorite restaurants in Branson a year or so back. And as I was getting up, our whole family was eating together. The restaurant's called Sugarleaf. I got up from the table to go to use the restroom, and I saw this senior couple sitting there. They were struggling. They were frustrated. So I just swung by their table. I walked over, and I said, so, how was everything? And he said to me, well, be honest with you, we're kind of frustrated. I go, oh, I said, well, what seems to be the problem? Well, your sign outside advertised bratwurst. We stood in line for 20 minutes, we get to the register, and you're out of bratwurst. And now I'm gonna pause right here, this story, let's just pause and I'll come right back into it. I can't wait until like my biggest issue of the day. There's a senior guy back there going, this is serious. I don't know what all these people are laughing about. But I got real issues, just like the CEO behind me. Okay, so I'll come back in. And they were just mad that the store was out of bratwurst. And I'm like, well, they must be good. And I joked with them. I could tell they were in no joking mood. So I just said, hey, what can we do to make this right? It started to change their tune. I could see the burden of the run on bratwurst kind of lifting from his shoulders. I said, what if I get you a piece of pie? And I mean, instant change. They're like, oh, well, thank you very much. So I went and I stood in line. I bought him a piece of pie. I came back. I set it on the table in front of him. And I said, here, this is on us. We hope everything's good. And he starts asking me questions about the restaurant. And I have to go, hey, ho, whoa. I said, sir, I don't work here. That's my family over there, and I have my family all wave to him from across the restaurant. He starts looking at the pie. But why is that so much fun? Amy says, you do it all the time in Branson, Ted. She goes, you engage tourists in deep conversations. And I do. My family will be at the van, and I'm still there talking to a couple from Iowa, like, hey, how's it going? Where are you from? Oh, that's great. Welcome to Branson. Some of my favorite shows are. And then I get back. She goes, Ted, I don't know if you've noticed this. She challenged me on this a couple of years ago. She said, you love engaging tourists, but when you see a church member, she said, your response to a church member from 50 yards out is, I did that just for the camera guy. Isn't that kind of fun? Oh, all right, there we go. So, she says, why is that? And I really wrestled with that for a little bit. But you know what it is? One word: expectation. I said, I can have a conversation with a tourist and we just have a ball because there's no expectation of getting together for coffee in a few days. What will happen in your marriage? Because we don't want you just sitting with reality of like, oh, yeah, this is how it's always gonna be. And we have a lot we'd like to do and where we wanna go. You have to discuss this. This is where we are. Let's be real about where we are. This is our dreams and our hopes for the future, and I don't wanna just remove expectations off I wanna talk about them. I wanna discuss them. I wanna have great conversation. And the 15 to 20 minute daily delay, the beauty of that is sitting down and saying, here's where we are. And really, this is all counseling is. All counseling is sitting down and helping a couple who's typically escalated in their feelings, and I get that. And it's listening and understanding and helping them work through, where are we? Where do we wanna go? I wanna listen today to your heart. I wanna listen today to what you're sharing. And I'm gonna do that with an attitude of discovery. I'm gonna do that with curiosity and fascination. As you share something with me that you're maybe dissatisfied with in our marriage, I'm not gonna give you an excuse. I'm not gonna give you a reason why it's always been that way. I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna take that in. But it takes conversation. It takes sitting down. And instead of saying, I hope he understands what I'll be sharing with him on the ride home tonight, because we're gonna do our 15 to 20 minutes on the ride home. But be a great listener. Be a great understander. Validate more than seeking to be understood. Allow that 15 to 20 minutes. And you're like, I don't know if we can do that. Well, let me tell you, get a prop. Get a little Matchbox car or something from your kid's toy box. And the person holding the Matchbox car is the one who gets to speak. And then when you're done speaking and feel like you've been understood, pass the Matchbox car over to your husband or to your wife. And some of you right now are going, I have a master's degree. I do not need a Matchbox car to be a communicator. You need it more than anybody. All right? I'm just telling you, it'll help. It'll help tremendously as you live in this gap between where we are and what we want. And I'm not telling you to take all of this, the reality of where you're at and say like, well, if it's always gonna be like that, and I don't even have the energy or the drive to wanna serve him without expectation of him doing the same thing back to me. Why don't you make the first move? Why don't you make the decision tonight to disconnect from your husband or disconnect from your wife as the source of life and say, I'm no longer gonna blame him for my unmet expectations. Instead, I'm gonna start giving, serving, and loving him, okay, with no expectation of that coming back to me. And you're like, well, how long do I have to do that? It starts with 15 to 20 minutes. It's like your time. And some of you are like, that's gonna be like running a race 15 to 20 minutes. If I'm to bite my tongue for 15 or 20 minutes, the reason the value is there in the 15 to 20 minutes is because you can do anything for 15 or 20 minutes. And you sit there and you listen, you understand and validate. Last year, I met a couple named Lloyd and Jean. In October, Lloyd and Jean celebrated 70 years of marriage. And he sat through an entire weekend conference that I gave in Iowa City, Iowa. And he came up to me afterwards and he said, on Friday night, he said, don't ever stop doing what you're doing. And I said, well, I appreciate that. I go, tell me about your story. He said, well, we didn't have all the devices and the ability to do all the communicating that your generation does. But when I went to World War II, he said, I wrote Jean every single day. He said, it took me 15 to 20 minutes. But I wrote her every day. They picked out, this is good. She was here. He was over saving the world for us. They picked out a star. And he said, I just want us to look at that star every night. And it just brought comfort to them, knowing, looking, and the ladies are going, oh. I'd like us to have a star. And this is so good. You know what he said to me? He said, Ted, you got to get couples communicating. You got to get them to just lighten up a little bit and spend just a little bit of time talking through everything. He told me on Friday night, he said, would you be okay if I brought you, I can't bring them all, there's just too many of them, but he said, can I just bring you a few or some of the letters that I wrote her during World War II? And I said, Lloyd, I'd be honored. So the next morning, he brought me this. And I said, Lloyd, do you expect me to read all those? He showed me, the war, I mean, they had guys that cut out parts that would give away too much information. And I looked at it, man, I read one or two of them, and I'm like, Lloyd, this is where it's at. Taking the time every day to pour your heart out for the one you love. Man, and that we just are in too much of a rush. We don't have the margin in our lives to do this. I brought a picture of them I want to show you. 70 years, and look how happy they are. They were the last couple to talk to me on Saturday afternoon. And they're standing there holding each other up. And they said, this was so great. This was so great. You keep challenging those young people, Teddy. I go, man, I will. I kid you not. Jean reaches in her purse. She pulls out 2 collapsible canes. She hands one to Lloyd. She takes one. And at the same time, like Indiana Jones, they both went... And I called Amy immediately and I said, we're buying 2 collapsible canes. Because we're gonna be walking off into the sunset, if the Lord allows, 70 years, that'd put me at about 111, but about 50 years from now, and I'm convinced it starts in the daily communication. So we talked about the daily delay and how important that is to protect this, the weekly withdrawal. That's all about creating anticipation and memories worth repeating. This is the Hershon Family Entertainment Corporation mission statement, and I'm sure there's some of them here tonight. And I love this mission statement because this is what has become the centerpiece of our marriage. Amy and I, every time we go on a date, we're like, we've got to do something memorable. So we've done some crazy things. We decided a couple years ago to go roller skating. How many of you have been roller skating? You're like laser tag and roller skating. These two are a party on wheels. They need to move. We're in Branson. We've got 4 restaurants, so we got to get creative, okay? But we're roller skating. If you haven't been to a roller skating rink in a few years, it hasn't changed in the last 40. It's like the one last place on earth that has not innovated at all. You pull into the parking lot and the Trans Ams are lined up in front. Def Leppard's pumping out of the speakers. Smoke billowing out. And then you go inside and there's that one guy. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? He's got wristbands and a headband. He right now is about 60 and he's awesome. And he wants you to know he's awesome. And so there's never 2 of these guys. There's always just one of these guys. And so Amy and I are out there skating, listening to they had oldies going that. Oh, it was so good. And it was ruined the whole night by this guy coming. So here Amy and I skating, through skate land, right? And every time he'd come, he'd have to make his presence known. He'd be right behind us. He'd swing behind us and then go. Does anybody know that guy now that I'm talking about? Yes, get away from me, weirdo. What are you doing? But what you're doing, when you create memories like that, you're like, I'm not the best roller skater in the world, but we got to do that again because we still talk about that. We still laugh. That's what I love about dating, anticipation, and you're creating memories that you're like, we got to go do that again. You know it's a great memory when 2 years from now, you're still talking about it. 10 years from now, do you remember when? And we see this in the Song of Songs in chapter 2. Solomon and the Shulamite woman are not yet married, but they're dating. They're courting. And what we see is we get this picture of Solomon. All right, he's excited, and he's going to come and pick her up for a date. And he's going to take her away. And you're gonna love this. If you're brand new to Hebrew poetry, like you've never studied Hebrew poetry before in your life, we're gonna have some fun with this. Let's read through this together. Listen, my beloved, look, here he comes. All right, so guys, you're picking her up. You're splashing on maybe a little Old Spice, maybe you're cleaning up, you're putting something nice on, you're making this a special occasion, leaping across the mountains, bounding over the hills. My beloved is like a gazelle or a young stud. Look, there he stands behind our wall, gazing through the windows, peering through the lattice. Now, if this is your first time with Hebrew poetry, you're going, this guy's a pervert. He's a peeping Tom. That's not at all what that verse is sharing. That verse is sharing, he can't wait to get a look at her. He can't wait to see her. So my brothers out there, let me help you. It's not, I'll meet you in the car. Be ready at this time. It's, I'm gonna pick you up. I'm literally, so maybe for some of you, it's gonna be a pickup. And you're kicking the kids off as you're going out the door and you're walking out. Why? Because you're a young stud. You've come to get your wife, and that's what this all is painting, this anticipation, our excitement of being together. My beloved spoke and said to me, arise, my darling, my beautiful one, come with me. See, the winter is past, the rains are over and gone, flowers appear on the earth. The season of singing has come. The cooing of doves is heard in our land. The fig tree forms its early fruit. The blossoming vines spread their fragrance. Arise, come, my darling, my beautiful one. Come with me. This is beautiful poetry. He's excited to be with her, to spend time with her. And this is going to be a memory that we create and enjoy. So, last year, my family was at one of our favorite restaurants in the country. It's called the Liberty Market, and it's in Gilbert, Arizona. And we're sitting there as a family, and I look across the restaurant at this couple. They're wearing the same t-shirt. I don't really know what's going on. They're laughing, and they're laughing, and they're laughing. And then I see him start wrapping his foot with an ace bandage. Now, you don't see this in restaurants a lot. I'm going, what is going on? But I believe every marriage is a duet in need of great backup singers. So I love backing up the marriages I see all around me. And I love sharing this with my kids. So we finish our meal. I walk right up to the table and I'm like, what is going on at this table? I go, I've been watching you and listening the whole time from over there. And some of you are like, you should really be more present with your family when you're at restaurants, Ted. You're too involved in the lives of other people. Just not church members, but other people. So they're laughing and they're like, you would. And then I noticed, you know what it said on their t-shirts, their matching t-shirts? Tough Mudder. If you don't know what the Tough Mudder is, would you raise your hand? Okay, let me tell you. It's this insane obstacle course race. And when I say insane, I can't even explain to you how insane this thing is. Okay, they have big tunnels submerged underwater. They want you to feel like you're drowning as you go through this tunnel. You go over walls and through fire. The very last thing, so I'm told, is you are electrocuted right before you get to the finish line. They got like Christmas lights hanging out. You go through the deal. And you're laughing because you're like, who would do that? I don't know. But this couple just did it, and they're laughing, and they're laughing, and they're laughing. And I said, can I give you some marriage advice? I give unsolicited marriage advice everywhere I go. I took their silence as consent. I said, I would sign up for that event again next year. And they're like, well, if we recover from this one, this was crazy. I go, but you see what happened? You had so much fun together. It bonded you. It brought you together. You enjoyed one another. And I think couples go through too long of a season of drought in their marriage where there is no fun, there is no play, there is no laughter, there is no dreaming. This is why your date night is so important. This is why prioritizing couple time, prioritizing quality couple time is the lifeblood of your marriage. The annual abandon. This is the macro date. This is the big one. And I know where my wife wants to go when I say annual abandon. For some of you, it's the beach. How many of you, it's the beach? Okay, how many of you, it's the mountains? How many of you, it's the big city? I don't know why I'm asking that. in Atlanta. For my wife, it's the big city. She wants to go to a big city. She wants to walk, kid you not, between 10 to 15 miles a day. And we're so different, my wife and I, when we come up to the sign, like we just did our annual abandon in December in New York City, and we're walking, squeezing the cheeks together, right? We're just going. And when we get to the walk, don't walk sign, our response to that sign is completely opposite of one another. When it says don't walk, I'm like, all right, awesome. Whew, and she's standing there. And we do 10 to 15 miles, and then we end at a nice restaurant, and she wants it to be slow, 2, 3, 4 hours long. And then we came out of a show in New York, and she said, oh, let's go, that was a good show. And we were 3.5 miles from where we were gonna eat, and we already got our quota of miles in for the day. But I knew what would make her just go through the roof. I said, do you wanna, instead of Ubering down to the financial district, do you wanna walk? Do I wanna walk? Let's go. Right, and I just know. So the annual abandon ignites intimacy and adventure. This is planning I want this to be special for you. Now again, brand new to Hebrew poetry, you're gonna love this. This is fantastic. Here's what Song of Songs chapter 7 says. Come, my beloved, let us go to the countryside. She's saying, okay, so the En-Gedi is our home. We want it to be safe. It's 15 to 20 minutes a day. We're connecting with each other, and it's lush, it's relaxing, it's refreshing, it's rejuvenating. But then he comes and gets me. That's the weekly withdrawal. We're gonna go away. He says, come with me. Now the annual abandons in chapter 7. Let us go to the countryside. Let us spend the night in the villages. Now she's saying what? Let's get out of town. Let's leave the crazies at home. Let's leave our technology at home. Let's leave the laptop. Let's leave any way of connecting you and your work. Let's leave that at home. You're a busy guy. Let's get out of here. And I love this. This is beautiful. It goes on to say in verse 12, let us go early to the vineyards to see if the vines have budded and if their blossoms have opened and if the pomegranates are in bloom. Now watch this. There I will give you my love. Let me say that again. We're out away from everyone. There I will give you my love. I want to give you the Hebrew term behind this text. The Hebrew term is bow, bow, chicka, chicka, bow, bow. And if you, my brother, are engaged in this talk right now, you're asking where you want to go. Where is our annual abandon? Let me tell you, let's say you plan one for the fall. Oh, you're going to be thinking about it. You're going to be planning it. You're going to be dreaming about it. You're going to be talking about it. Your date nights are going to be conversation about the annual abandon, when we get away and when we go to be by ourselves and enjoy one another physically. And I want to add, I believe this is promoting the outdoors. I'm going to leave it at that. I have a pastor friend who takes this passage literally, but he's a golfer. And at midnight at a resort once, he and his wife enjoyed one another on the golf course. And I thought, you are a brave soul. But I thought, the memories that we create, that I'm trying to go to a serious moment here. I have a transition planned. The time we spend together, I hope you see how all of this builds. To be real honest with you, there's many in the room right now that going away on a sex date for the weekend, you're like, no way. I don't want him touching me. I don't want her, no. We haven't had a healthy conversation in months. The tension is so thick in our home. Can I encourage you? The weekly withdrawal and the annual abandon, just put those aside for right now. And you start with 15 to 20 minutes. My challenge and encouragement to you is to say, we can have a marriage that we never dreamed was possible. And the power of 15 to 20 minutes a day where we discuss our expectations, where we connect to one another, heart to heart, eye to eye, body to body. We're connected to one another. We're listening, we're understanding, we're validating the feelings of the other. Unplugging from each other as the source of life, serving and giving and loving each other without expectation of anything in return. I believe that will lead you towards a healthy marriage when you plug into the true and only source of life. And his name is Jesus.